Hello, everyone, and welcome to WHU Inside Business. I'm your host, Nicholas Peterson, reporting to you from Aachen in Germany. Today, joining me is Detlef Wittig. Wittig is a former chief executive officer of the Czech automobile manufacturer Skoda Auto and former member of the management board of the Volkswagen Group. He graduated from the University of Göttingen in 1968 to then hold various positions at the Volkswagen Group in France, Japan, Canada, the Czech Republic, and Germany. Most noteworthy are his roles as president of Volkswagen Canada, chairman of the board of directors of Skoda Auto, and chief sales and marketing officer for the Volkswagen Group. Since his retirement in 2011, he has given numerous talks within the automotive space and is a founding member of the Automotive Trend Forum in Würzburg. Mr. Wittig, welcome.
Thank you very much, Niklas.
And given your, extensive experience in the automotive industry, I would first like to begin with, since your time in the industry, what has been the most profound and positive and negative effects of digitalization, in the automotive industry?
Well, let me start by saying digitalization is certainly part of technology, and technology, on the other hand, has always been a driving factor, or maybe the driving factor in automotive industry. It's been technology, not financing, not marketing, not whatsoever. But it's always been technology. When we go back, even 100 years back, when automobiles product and manufacturing started, was mechanizing the production. It was later, and now we are back to the 80s, 90s. It was computerizing design of automobiles. It was computerizing of manufacturing, and now it's digitalization. So it's always been technology that was driving the automotive industry, and even vice versa. The automotive industry drove technology and technology successes. So now today we are in a new phase of technology, and we can say this is the fourth or fifth revolution of technology. It is the IT technology, the digitalization. So from my point of view, this is more or less a consequent further step of technology in the automotive business. Maybe it's not a continuous type of thing and not the evolution type of thing. It is more what one could say a disruption, but it is technology with a major leap forward. And on the other hand, it is more, this time more than just technology. It is, as we say, we are driving into a new kind of mobility. So it's the mobility business. It's not only past technology or future technology, is more than just technology. It comprises more aspects of society than ever before.
And looking into what this mobility idea is looking forward, how do you see the automotive industry changing to adopt from what used to be manufacturers of automobiles into, I guess, producers of methods of mobility in the future?
Yeah. Well, as we say, we are moving from being a car manufacturer to a software-driven mobility company. And that's all about the industry, actually, wherever it's. Some are a bit further ahead, others are lagging behind, but that is the direction. And this simply says that with this application of information technology, going into digitalization or going into, in the car industry, to electric transformation of engines and going into even autonomous driving in the future. I think we can see totally new business areas, business fields coming up. It's software used to be an IT technology driven by IT engineers. Now software has to be applied to automobiles. So car designers have to be able to apply software programs. So it's software. It is data, big data that needs to be analyzed and needs to be applied. It's all kinds of mobility services. It's also one of the driving or the substantial factors of electric cars are batteries. So battery technology, this is chemistry in reality. So you have to go into chemistry and then apply it, and you have to go for battery manufacturing, not good old engine manufacturing, but battery manufacturing, battery cell manufacturing, putting this together. So it's a totally new field of business, of mobility services, of going into mobility, of leasing cars, of sharing cars, and so it's to a certain kind, yes, it is a disruption of the previous history, going into a new future of the automobile business.
So bring us into the boardroom when you were sitting. What is the earliest time that you remember? Kind of when someone brought up, or whoever it was that brought this idea of this shift from automobile manufacturing in its traditional legacy version to what automobiles will be in the future.
Well, we had always discussions of what is the next step, how can we progress, and certainly it's time ago it was going from gasoline driven cars into diesel driven cars and so forth and so forth. It was, but when we look at the present situation, I think the serious discussions on how to change from fuel-driven engines to electric engines, and even going into speculation of autonomous driving someday, that started in our case in 2000, I would say in 2000 or even earlier. And we had made plans, and we went through design studies, and we went through experimenting with electric cars, even back to 1980. Volkswagen was running a fleet of electric cars I think in Switzerland, in Zurich, in the 1980s. But the time wasn't ripe yet, because cost of designing, availability of loading stations for electric cars. So that was all. It was more experiment, and we gave up finally. Well, not really good at that time, but okay, but we gave up. But the discussion came back again at about 2000, and we had serious discussions on what is the future. Is the future the fuel-driven engines, or is the future something different? Electricity, battery technology, or even hydrogen? So those were the discussions. And I think in the case of Volkswagen, certainly we had a major case, and that was the famous diesel scandal. So Volkswagen was forced to change. They had discussed it, they had prepared something, but at a given time, at a certain time, Volkswagen was forced, and others were also forced, being for competitive reasons, like Tesla was driving it. So is Tesla just a small manufacturer and being stuck in a niche kind of market, or will it become mainstream? Or the Chinese, what are the Chinese doing? Those were the discussions. So it wasn't quite clear. And because if something is not quite clear, you have to at least put one leg into it. So and I think, yes, it's back 20 years from now, and in the case of Volkswagen was then forced to do major steps to get out of this diesel scandal problem and the subsequent problems that came up.
And you bring up Tesla, because of course everyone, with the cult following of Elon Musk these days, and how inspirational he's been to the mobility market. How much did Tesla push? And was it you in the beginning, you mentioned that this electric car, you were debating whether or not this is a niche market, whether this is going to be mainstream. But how much do you think Tesla actually drove the industry versus whether it would have been naturally unfolding the way it has been towards electric cars itself?
Well, I think driving that technology was not one entrepreneur or one industry, but it was the politics driving it. It was the social pressure going out of, it's the famous CO2 discussion and air pollution and so forth, and the natural end of the resources of coal and of gas in 20, 30, 40, 50 years and so forth. And that was driving the political decision makers to put on certain pollution laws, legislation, and so forth and so forth. And therein, I think Tesla, Elon Musk, did a great job. He was a visionary, so to speak, and he was not sort of opposing these kinds of regulations, but he was taking advantage of it, and he was jumping ahead. So and on the other hand, as he was not a car guy, he was going for not only electric cars, but I think the most important driving factor as far as Tesla is concerned is the software application. And when we look at who is ahead of the business, who is lagging behind, I think Tesla is most advanced in the application of software technologies in a car. And that's what everyone now tries to go after, but with a certain learning effect still to be done. But again, Tesla was not sort of inventing and driving it, but it was the politics, the social requirements, and so forth. And he sort of grabbed it and did not oppose, like the majority of automobile institutions and automobile clubs, but he went for it and went for electricity, but especially went for the application of software technologies in the car.
Yeah, no, understood. And from a mechanical engineering perspective, the internal combustion engine, which has been, perfected and refined by the German automakers over the past century, is much more interesting to study as a system than an electric motor. And I wonder, what, in your opinion, what is the future of the internal combustion engine? Is it to be used only for industrial purposes? Will there be gasoline and diesel powered cars in the future? How do you see this transition? Because it's an enormous system. It's honestly a beautiful mechanical engineering feat, the internal combustion engine. But now, the common pop culture is towards the role that this piece of technology is obsolete. How do you see it?
Well, certainly it will be obsolete because the combustion engines, be it diesel, be it gasoline-driven, be it even gas-driven, that's running out because the resources are limited, and the cost of meeting the pollution legislation is getting higher and higher, and will not be paid by customers for. So from that point of view, we can see that this will come to an end, whether it's in 10 years or 20 years or even in 30 years. Well, you don't know that, but it's going to be an end. And the same question, and there is a discussion already, are the electrical engines the final answer, or are there also only a step in between to something else in the future? So, which is impossible to be answered today, because hydrogen, as it maybe next future step, is still very difficult to handle, very cost-wise, very expensive. So one doesn't know, but maybe there will be something else coming up. So we will see. But again, the combustible engines, I think they are sort of going out over a certain distance now.
And with this, not accounting for hydrogen, which, as you mentioned, has a lot of things working against it. It's helping hydrogen being very, very unstable fuel source. What do you think are the unintended consequences of trying to transition to an electric vehicle market that maybe we are overlooking at this moment?
Well, it is whenever you sort of go in to transform something and you give up something and to create something new, then you will always have the problem of will it be a totally disruptive situation with all these social consequences of a disruption, social consequences to destroy employment and not being able at the same time to replace it by something new, because a transformation process goes for, you need some time in order to re-educate people, retrain people, or restructure an industry. And the automotive industry is not only the automobile manufacturers, it is the supply industry, as big as the automotive industry. So you have to restructure a whole system that cannot be made in a year's or 2 years' time. So you will need 10 to 20 years in order to restructure the whole system, going into something new by not losing income levels, workplaces, by not going into major social problems. And I think that is one of the questions of the present transformation phase. To say that we don't allow combustible engines anymore after 2025. I think this is impossible for this huge industry. Again, comprising the suppliers, you need more time. You don't only need more time, you have to make use of the time in order then to really train people, relocate people, or whatever is needed, or to put up new plants. Also, you need to support, to somehow promote or subsidize the demand in order to get this thing up. And you see, without any support, government subsidizes in most of the countries, the demand for electrical engines and cars would not be as high as it is, at least. So you need support, you need promotion on the one hand, you have to look at maybe also restructuring. For instance, fuel engines needed fuel and gas stations. So now you need to have the loading stations for the charging stations for electricity. So this is actually are all factors that are hindering the further success of electric cars. So someone has to to invest into it, either private people or the industry or the governments, if they want to have this change faster running than maybe in a more evolutionary situation. So it's the social consequences of a rapid transformation are certainly very difficult to handle. So one needs, in order to have a soft landing, one needs a certain time, but one has to make sort of use of the time and restructure and to put all the things in that I just referred to.
And how well do you think that the German, specifically focusing on Germany, how well do you think the German automotive corporations are adapting to this new vision? And even, pulling in the German government, because of course Volkswagen is partly owned by the government. How is this partnership, affecting the vision? Where are they lagging, and where are they ahead of the curve?
Well, certainly the German industry, like all the other industry except Tesla, was lagging behind, and the sort of the governmental sort of the government setting targets were, it wasn't really welcomed by the industry, and the industry didn't really follow and didn't really start early enough. And that's why everyone, more or less everyone, sort of is lagging behind, is now driving hard to catch up. As far as the German industry is concerned, I think that the German car industry, the German manufacturers are speeding up and in a very, very high speed of catching up. And I think from that point of view, the German car industry is getting closer to Tesla than anyone else in the world automotive industry, except some of the still small Chinese specialist manufacturers. So from that point of view, I don't worry about the German industry, because we can see the offer of electrical engines is there. The mobility services are there already, and BMW and Mercedes-Benz and also Volkswagen, Audi, they are into that race, and I think the speed of catching up is very high, and from that point of view, I don't worry about the German industry.
Well, the news that I was reading the other day was saying that the share of electric vehicles being sold, this is in the US, but the share went from 2020, it was, I think, almost 80%. Now it's down to 66%. And so the data is showing that the trend is taking the majority away from Tesla. But with that said, of course, Tesla is now worth in market cap over $1 trillion US dollars. Is Tesla really worth $1 trillion? More than the next at least 8 automobile manufacturing companies combined?
Well, it's difficult to understand what happens at the capital markets. And so at the same time, I would say it's difficult to understand the value of Tesla given by the capital market. And I don't think at the same time that Tesla will sort of stay at that level, because, as we said before, other manufacturers are catching up, but Tesla also is driving into or becoming a more normal manufacturer. They used to have this first seller momentum, but they are now going into mass production of cars as well. So with high investment, which they hadn't before, high investment, high risk, and going into distribution systems, which they hadn't before. So they're in addition to electrical engines and to software application, they are going into normal automotive manufacturers areas. From that point of view, I think the value of Tesla will become more substantial than before, but will not stay at this level.
Then I'll move on to this last question to wrap up our interview, which is actually one that I've stolen from Peter Thiel, who I've recently been following a lot, which is, and this one, it's a bit of a controversial one, because usually the speakers will not want to divulge this information. But the question is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on?
Yeah, I think the present transformation and the kind of disruption at the same time is, on one hand, it's a new experience. On the other hand, we have always had changes, soft changes, dramatic changes. And from that point of view, people are complaining about changes and trying to prevent changes. There are institutions, there are government institutions, non-governmental, who try to sneak around or to try to prolong this, or somehow they don't jump on it. And from that point of view, I can simply say, with the experience I have, the changes have always been there. Changes, the speed of changes has changed, has accelerated. And from that point of view, I would say, don't complain. Don't hinder changes. Take it as it is and be a driving part of it. And don't sort of stand up against it.
Well, I think that definitely is applicable to many, many, many different industries, topics, ideas, and very truthful in its essence. But thank you, Mr. Wittig, for coming on today with WHU Inside Business. I appreciate all the insights. I'm sure our listeners will also appreciate these insights. And for all of you listening to us and watching us, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you also.